away from it. We will be chatting about quite a few different topics today. The main ones will be just managing the high performance athlete. We'll talk a bit about working with athletes in different cultures, different sports, and how that sort of impacted our philosophies at the moment. We'll be talking a little bit about our own brand, APA, and what the vision for that is. We'll also talk about, we'll also answer a few questions that you guys have put across to us. We had some interesting ones coming through, so we'll try and chat around that and give you guys some feedback. So I think we'll bring Wayne into the live now. Cracking. Okay,
How's Robs?
there's Wayne.
How are you guys doing?
Hi Wayne, thanks for joining in.
No worries.
Yep,
Thanks
all
for
good.
getting this going.
Good. Yep. I hope it'll be something good, something that we can carry on doing for a while.
Yeah,
We'll
for
look
sure.
to get some different people onto the live as well, which will make it quite interesting. So Wayne's obviously the co-founder and director of APA as well, and he's worked around the world, different countries with numerous different sports. So he's got a lot of knowledge that he can share and that he will share today. We'll crack on. We'll get going straight away because we want to keep these things quite short as well. So Wayne, you can just give us a quick introduction and your journey so far and how you've got to India.
Yeah, thanks, Robs. So my journey is quite an interesting one. So I started off in Durban many years ago. We were just looking at actually trying to become a professional cricketer, and then eventually I realized that's not going to be the case and started studying a little bit more seriously. So my undergraduate studies started in sports science, and then after that did an honors degree in biokinetics, which is a South African degree, which is primarily focused on rehab type stuff. After that, I was lucky enough to move on to Cape Town, where I was offered an internship at Sports Science Institute with High Performance Center under a really good manager by the name of Justin Durant. That's where I spent the next 6 years of my life working with various athletes that come into the institute. So from all South African athletes to international athletes, whoever was using the institute. And over that time, grew in the company a little bit, where it became senior consultant to the High Performance Center. Worked with some great people there. I know you're obviously one of those guys that were part of that whole clan that worked at High Performance Center. So at some point, started working with the South African women's hockey team as a consultant to them. And the coach there, Giles Bonet, eventually invited me over to China because he had been there for a while. So I took the leap of faith and then decided to resign from High Performance Center and take that chance and go to China. Spent 2 years on and off there, but 1 year full time, pretty much. And then after that, got a message randomly via social media, someone asking if I was willing to come across to India and work initially with a private company. And they consulted with various Olympic-based sports, from mainly combat sports, but also some athletics. And while there, I got another email asking if I was willing to come across to work with the women's hockey team. So it was quite a big decision at that time because it would have been something different for me to work with full time with the women's team. But it was something I thought it would be a good, nice challenge for me. And that's 5 years ago, almost 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago that I've been in India.
Yep. And certainly a diverse range. I think you've obviously worked with a lot of athletes. Just name a few of the different sports that you've worked with?
Yeah, so in South Africa it was a big range. So from Paralympic sports athletes, I've worked with wheelchair basketball, worked with para swimming, was quite a big one for me. So, and then also a lot of rugby, cricket as normal in South Africa, then field hockey, obviously. And then while in my stint before field hockey in India was with wrestling, boxing, and various athletes like high jump, javelin, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And just quickly on India, how are you enjoying the experience? It is quite a unique situation that we're in. I think it'd be quite interesting for the guys outside of India to know what our setup is essentially.
Yeah, so the thing with India, I think, like Robs, that it actually grows on you the more you hear. One of the things I love about India are the athletes we work with. I think we're very lucky to get as much access to the athletes that we work with all the time. I don't think many structures allow that sort of access. But yeah, so in India, from a performance perspective, is really good for us because of that access. Um, and what I've learned with the athletes, once you get their buy-in and they understand that you're actually here for them, because they haven't had that feeling of inclusiveness into a training program that I think that we've tried to base our philosophy around, in India, the buy-in you get from these athletes, they're willing to run through walls for you.
Yeah, for sure. Let's crack on. Just you did a presentation last week, I think, on managing high-performance athletes, and you've given a little bit of background. So I think people understand that you have worked with a lot of different athletes, and you've got a lot of experience. So what's your philosophy in terms of managing the high-performance athlete?
Yeah, so I think it's a big one. And for me, the most important thing is human first. I think a lot of people think you take high performance athletes and you can just throw everything at them. But I think one of the most important things we forget in the performance environment is they're actually human beings. They got families, they got emotions, and they also just want to be treated as normal people. So if you can get that through to them or understand that, the buy-in you get from them is really good. But over and above that, from the performance side, is I want to create an environment where I build the most robust athletes possible. Because in the end, as you know, we need to prepare them to allow the coaches, whatever the coaches throw at them, they need to be prepared for it. So not only do we want to increase their performance, but we also want to reduce their risk of injury. So we don't want to get to a point where whatever the coaches throw at them, that they're struggling with that. So we need to build such big robustness, big chronic loads, so they're able to cope with whatever demands that the coaches want.
Yeah, sure. And what's your strategy in terms of going about that? Where do you start? How do you progress them?
Yeah. So I think one of the big things is understanding the athlete profile that you're working with. So every athlete is starting at different standards of fitness, if you can call it that, especially in a team environment. So as you know, we're working with 33 different individuals within a team. So you need to adjust the training environment for each individual as much as possible. Although we can't give 33 individual programs because that's just not feasible, we want to adjust it as much as possible to get the most out of each individual. So one of the things that I try is keeping things as simple as possible, because if athletes can do the simple things savagely well over a long period of time, they're going to get better. I think a lot of times we try or in the performance industry, you see a lot of people doing the fancy stuff and they get wowed by this. But in my opinion, I think, that's not what's going to create better athletes in the end. I think the athletes that do things consistently they might not seem that fancy are the ones that are going to actually perform better in the long run.